welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, this is Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am your host, Jessica, and I am here with the author of a book that is going to absolutely 100% be one of my favorites of the year.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, instant favorite, instant favorite. Why don't you tell us who you are and tell us about this book?
Yeah, of course. I'm the author, Ruth McKell, and Honey in Her Veins is my debut novel. It comes out next month on April 7th, 2026. And I'm so excited to be here on the podcast today talking to you about it.
Yeah, no, I'm excited as well. I loved this book. This was one of the books that had like a really great pitch. Everything about it sounded lovely. It sounded different. It sounded, you know, like refreshing. It sounded a little dark and it was fabulous. So, this is a story. It's told from a few different perspectives,
Hmm.
but our romantic protagonists are, is it Eva or is it Ava?
Ava.
Ava and Arthur,
Yes.
who are they are in love, but they were separated through circumstances. And those circumstances were that something happened years in the past that involved Ava's tree magic. And Arthur left and broke her heart, and it broke his heart. But now he's back to bury his mother at the where Ava and her sister Isabel are, and questions begin to arise as to what really happened. The other part of it, though, is that Arthur, while Ava has tree magic, Arthur has a different kind of magic, and he's also his mind is inhabited by this monster, as he calls it. So, where did the
Hmm.
idea for this story come from?
Um, so it definitely came from a few different places because it was an amalgamation of many things over the years. But Arthur's monster specifically was actually inspired by and came into being when I was going through kind of my own oh, walk through anxiety and depression. And this was post COVID. It was in 2021. I was a new mom. I hadn't gone back to therapy and I needed to. And I remember just having this feeling. I'd come back to writing very recently after years of missing it, but just not being able to really attend to it with like college and different things happening in my own life. And when I came back to it and I really missed it, I just kept feeling like my brain, my mind was my own enemy. That for reasons I didn't understand yet, because back in, I mean, this was in 2021, that was 5 years ago, there was a lot of work I hadn't done for myself. I just felt like no matter what I did, my brain was always fighting against me. It felt not like a monster in the literal way that it was for Arthur or for the same reasons, but like it was my enemy. And like I had all the people who I could have rooting for me for this thing or that thing. I had all this good support except for myself. That there was something in me that was fighting against where I was trying to go. And it started to bleed out onto the page. I wanted to write a character who felt like their own mind was monstrous, that it felt like their enemy, that it felt like it was working against them. And Arthur bloomed out of that.
So, what about Ava and just the whole idea of this farm and all of this
Mm-hmm.
magic?
So Ava was really grew from the fact that I really missed the outdoors. I grew up in a family of gardeners, really. We always had like we had like I don't know if we can call it an orchard, but we called it our orchard. It was just like six trees. We had a little bit of land. We had a garden, and like my father is a botanist, and we would do a lot with trees, and we would do a lot with like plants, and I missed it. And Ava was kind of my outlet for that part of me that missed sinking my feet into soil, that missed feeling really connected to nature in a big way, and was trying to figure out how to get back to those roots of myself that I'd gotten away from as life had pulled me in a different direction. And so, in a lot of ways, she's a lot of my own internal pieces that I wanted to put into a person. And very naturally, it became this opposing force, of course, with Arthur's. Arthur has a very deadly kind of magic, and she has a very life giving kind of magic. So they kind of evolved into these natural opposites as the story grew over time.
Again, it's lovely. I absolutely adored it. And
Thank you.
yeah, I mean, so the setting, do you want to talk a little a bit about just kind of like where it takes place?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
So it takes place in the modern day. It's contemporary in a fictional small town in southern Pennsylvania. So I wanted to write a very intimate setting. I wanted to write a place that felt very closed and claustrophobic. You'll notice that there's a thread of claustrophobia that kind of underscores a lot of elements in the book and the way that Arthur feels feeling trapped with this monster in his head. You see that claustrophobia coming in other places too, even in the town. I wanted it to be this isolated setting that still felt familiar. So I wanted it to be in our real world. And I stumbled into the world of bees. It's kind of funny because I actually really loved them as a child. I was fearless. I would just pick them up and walk them around with like a bee on my finger, which is crazy when I think about like how little I got stung. But that's not the reason why I chose them initially for the story. I was several drafts into it before I remembered. I'm like, oh my gosh, I used to do that. I remember my writing roots actually started in poetry in first grade, and I had this little yellow notebook that I would take onto the playground and write poems in little 6, 7 year old girl. And one of them was the 10 B's of math because I just really loved bees. But as an adult, there was so much I didn't know. And draft after draft, I kept getting more pulled towards them. And I was like, what if we full send this into a story about beekeeping? And that's when I started to really deep dive into some of the folkloric history, especially the Celtic folkloric history of honeybees. Although it's fascinating how they show up in other cultures too and in other stories, and started to like look more into it's a whole world. I feel like now I know the tip of the iceberg on the bee world and the beekeeping world. I'm by far not even close to an expert, but an avid learner because I just think they are wonderful and fascinating. And so that's why I was like, we have this isolated town, this isolated setting, and I wanted to have these bees that felt like this really a big crucible for life in a sense for the main setting for our characters.
Yeah, no, it was really nice. And I like, like to Arthur, Ava's the bee girl. But
Mm-hmm.
she's also like the plant girl too. So,
Mm-hmm.
which fits. And just because I know that I mentioned the monster, but I can't exactly recall if I mentioned Arthur has like when he touches things, he drains life from it. And
Mm-hmm.
he is always fighting against that almost as much as he's fighting against the monster. And the monster is encouraging him to use it, and he does not want to. And there's just like so much balance that happens in that. But it's just like there's a lot of like just different levels to characters that have experienced various types of loneliness and various
Yeah.
types of guilt. And it's not even just them. Like I mentioned, excuse me, Ava's sister Isabel has her own story that she's sort of keeping concealed, which does have to do with the main story as well. But it's just like it's a bigger picture, and it weaves in with everything. How do you write? Do you always know the direction the story is going to take, or does the story take you on its path?
I feel like it's definitely somewhere in between. Writers, they have nicknames for, are you a plotter where you plot everything out and then you write it? Are you a pantser where you're flying by the seat of your pants and it's all telling you? And I think that most people are in the middle. I think both of them are a skill, like the flexibility to allow changes, to allow your characters to come alive in ways that you didn't expect. I think that's a skill, an openness to the story. But also, as someone who used to be far more that way, I found that finding ways to have structure from the beginning also helps me. I like to think about it almost, I mean, to be very on theme with this story, almost more like a garden, in that you provide a lot of structure, but it grows and it blooms and it does unexpected things. And some parts that you think are going to do really well die, like my watermelons did last year, or other parts that you don't expect, like sprout up. And you have to tend it, you care for it, you show up for it, and you come back to your story like again and again, but you're co-creating it, like if as the gardener you couldn't say like I made this. It's like, no, the seed made it, but I created a place where the seed could flourish and bloom and exist, and I helped it along, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's like you were digging things up, really.
Yeah, yeah,
Discovering them. Yeah.
very
I
much
don't
so.
I say this all the time. I'm like, I don't like the term pantser, and I don't know why, but I always say discovery writer
Hmm.
because it feels a little bit more natural. Like some people definitely do, I guess, fly by the seat of their pants, but when you talk about it as a process, it feels a lot more like you are figuring it out. And there's like you're in the
Hmm.
story and you're discovering it. Like I mean, like if you're riding through town, for instance, let's say you're visiting a town you haven't been to in a while, so things might have changed, right? Like you'll know, like, okay, well, there's where the graveyard is, and there's where, like
Hmm.
this is where the curve in the road is going to come. Like there are fixed points that you could probably see in your
Hmm.
story. But you're also like, oh, that building is new, or oh, that is, like that's a garden now. It used to be, I don't know, like dead woods. So I do think that it is a lot about that and about living in the world and, visiting it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Your characters in general, did one of them sort of grow before another for you? Was there one character that came to you before the others? How did you decide that you were going to add other points of view, like Isabel's, for instance?
Yes. Okay. So Ava was by far the very first character. I thought this was going to be her book for a very long time, until 2023. And so 2 years into writing and revising this story a million times, I came back to her and her story and her lore and her background, which used to be different than it is now. That's true for every single character in the book. They all used to be different and feel different. But was the first. I she was the anchor character, I thought. But the more and more that they grew and unraveled, the more I realized that emotionally, the most resonating voice for me and the arc and the growth that I cared about most and I most wanted to bring to the reader was actually with Arthur. And so I made a switch, and I wanted to place him more as the main character, which meant adjusting some aspects of the world and the background so that when readers read it, they feel Ava is an important character, but the heartbeat of the story is, Arthur's relationship to his monster, to himself.
How did you begin writing? How did your writing journey begin?
Well, as a mentioned before, as a little kid, I very much I was always writing. I was always telling myself stories. And I look back on it now and I'm able to kind of see how even when I wasn't like writing things down, I was that kid who like walked around like the backyard, like talking out loud and making up plays and singing songs on the tree swing and that were really bad and great. And I, when I couldn't sleep, I would have an ongoing story that I would tell myself from like I would start at the beginning and then like try to envision it in my head and I try to get to the next plot point, I guess you could say, but I didn't call it that. back then because I was a kid. But usually it really just trained me. If I think about stories, then I fall asleep. It really just Pavloved my brain a little. But it was always this really big dream and thing that I love to do that was very natural for my brain to fall into. But it was also very much always a background like, well, we have to have a more serious job than that. We have to we have to have a different plan. Like we can't actually pursue that professionally. I got my degree in something completely different. I had different jobs, and it was in post baby, post pandemic, two moves to different states that my brain, I was like, you know what? I really miss reading a lot. I used to read voraciously, like, and I'd gotten so burned out of very interesting nonfiction that I got burned out of it after a while being in university, and I started reading for fun again. And it took just a few weeks before I I realized, you know what I really miss even more is I miss writing. And like 6 weeks after picking that back up, and it was, can I tell you, it was terrible. I was so rusty and everything I was writing was really bad. And I was having so much fun. And I'm so glad I let it be so bad and so rough and so rusty because it reminded me of how much I loved this. And that's when I was like, I remember like 6 weeks in turning to my husband and saying, you know what, I want to do this, which is crazy because that wasn't the career path I was on at all. But I just really missed it. And it kind of felt like if I don't take myself seriously now, there's no one else is going to give me permission. It's not now or never, but it's more like, why not now? Like it's never going to get any easier. And this fills me up. I want to do it. And so I started going after it in earnest. And that was like the summer of 2021. And almost 5 years later, a lot has changed.
Well, again, this is really such a lovely book. I can't say enough for the language, for the story,
Thank you.
for the directions it goes in. There's a kitten in it that makes it
Yes.
even better. Anything is better with a kitten. And a cat. Cats too.
I've gotten some threats about you better not kill the cat. And I love that kitten very much, very emotionally attached to her.
Oh my God, she's a kitten. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's like, yeah, and I don't want to give too much away, but it is sort of just this very soft thing in the middle of a hard, intense situation.
Mhm.
And it's a connection. There's so many connections between Ava and Arthur, and that kind of brings a connection in sort of like a background one. But it was so, I don't know, it added so much to the story.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that that was working for you. I I love the comedic elements she adds, the softness she adds, and her name is Bug. That's not too big of a spoiler, but
I wasn't sure if
I
you wanted, wasn't sure if
it's
you wanted,
fine.
what her mother's name,
Is Hyssop.
which is adorable.
Thank you. And she serves the plot in an interesting way because Arthur has a deathly touch where he cannot touch things without killing them. He is very afraid to interact with the world. Ironically, though he has a more destructive power, he is much more conscientious of his abilities than Ava is, because for him, everything is incredibly permanent. Everything holds a lot of weight. So, if he touches something, it's dead. It's not coming back. And Ava is the opposite, in that she's like, it's really not that big of a deal because I can just bring it back. And so they both kind of have a lot to learn from each other. But Bug in particular, I feel like really reveals a lot about how Arthur is feeling about his own trust in himself. Because, the minute he sees her, he's like, what is a cat doing here? I can't have her near me, because he so desperately doesn't want to inflict harm. And so the way that his interactions with her, I really liked writing how his interactions with her kind of show something about how the state of his mind is feeling about himself and his trust in himself.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with next. Are you
Thank you.
are you having trouble leaving this world? Are you going to something completely different?
Oh my goodness. Well, I thought I was so ready to leave it just because I love it so much, but I've read it so many times and I'm like, I'm ready to put it down. And then I listened to my audiobook and it it's been throwing me back into the world and I am ready to work on the next thing. I am working on the next thing, but you never know. If an opportunity arises, I have a story in this world I would love to return to, but I don't know if I'll ever get that chance. And so I am coping with the departure by re-listening to the audiobook.
How is the narrator? Who's the narrator?
Oh, so it's Michael Gallagher and Susanna Jones. I have two, one male, one female, and they are both wonderful. And choosing them and listening to their narration has been probably my favorite whole part of this experience because I'm a very big audiobook person, and I have been since they were cassette tapes, books on cassette, books on CD, like that's a big thing I did growing up. And oh my gosh, I wouldn't read nearly as many books as I can having audiobooks where you can be doing the dishes or going on a walk or doing whatever you need to do, taking care of the dog, the kid, with audiobooks. And so being able to listen to them brought to life in that way was so fun and so surreal. And I've loved that.
Thank you so much. Check out Honey in Her Veins by Ruth McKell. This was Jessica with Syosset Public Library's Turn the Page podcast, and we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.